Hello and welcome to our Community Connections segment. I'm glad that you are joining us once again today. And my special guest on this segment is Deputy Chief of Avon Police, Brian Nugent. And he's going to be talking with us about their current hiring process that they are going through right now. So let's go ahead and bring him on the screen. Let me unmute his mic for him. And welcome, Brian. How are you today?
I'm doing good, Karen. How about you?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. So I heard that you guys are going through a hiring process right now. Is that right?
We are. It is. It's something that we advertised for several weeks, trying to get good qualified applicants. But as you well know, the job market and the job force is really kind of like something I've never seen before. We're like a lot of different agencies right now. Law enforcement's taking it pretty rough the last year and a half or so, and because of that, collectively, I think you're starting to see more and more agencies are kind of having to put their best foot forward and making sure that they are recruiting people, but not just bodies. We want the right bodies, right? We want people that want to really have a passion to serve others and really want to make an impact in their communities. And so in general, it's been an uphill battle. We're seeing a lot lower interest these days than what we're used to.
Right. I was wondering if you were kind of struggling to get applicants. It seems like a lot of businesses are struggling to get people to apply and things like that. But what's your goal? What's the number of officers that you're looking to expand with?
Well, right now we're still in the midst of our budget process, and so if you're familiar with state budgets, which it's an absolute headache to try to navigate through sometimes. But
right.
Typically our operations budgets have to be approved. Actually, they have to be adopted by the local municipality. Sometime in mid-October is a good time to get those adopted. The weird part is that a lot of governments have to operate January 1, but sometimes you don't get the approval from the Department of Local Government Finance until a couple of weeks later. So we're kind of ahead of the process right now. Our ambition is to hire 3 additional officers, and then we have 2 positions that people have retired and resigned from. And so altogether, looking for 5 qualified candidates is going to be very difficult. We've seen a lot of trends over the last several years change. Normally, and I wish I could articulate why this happens, but normally what we deal with is we'll do an online pre-application and we may get 500 people. We only see about 25% of those people actually get in their car and show up on test day, which just kind of blows my mind. 25%. Yeah. Such a low pull, but back in 2012, 2013, 2014, we would pull 500 or 600 online pre-applications. And I actually just checked our applications just about an hour or so ago. And right now we're at about 150. And so you're seeing just such a dramatic drop in the applicants. The applicant pool is smaller. So it's much more important that agencies are more competitive, not necessarily just in salary, but in benefits and a culture and working in a community that supports people. We're very fortunate to have that here with the greater Avon community, with Washington Township, Avon, Hendricks County as a whole, usually very pro-police, very pro-public safety. And so we're very fortunate to have that. So we'll see what we have. I think if I'm being optimistic, I think we might hopefully see about 50 people at the rate we're going now, which is this terribly small number, especially when you're trying to hire 5 people. And so we'll see what happens, but we start testing on Saturday. So we've had our information out there, and we're kind of excited to see what shows up.
Yeah, so I'm a little bit more familiar with the requirements of the fire side of things coming from my previous role. But maybe you could talk to us or our viewers a little bit about the requirements and, if they're interested in an officer or even if they're a current officer, what that would look like. So do you mind if I pull up those flyers that you sent me?
Yeah, that'd be awesome. In fact, we have a graphic that we have here. I think we have one for laterals. We'll talk about laterals here in just a moment. We have another graphic with our basic requirements, like the hiring criteria as well. So this is probably the graphic here that probably means the most to the individuals who are just out of school or a younger age. They're still trying to get into the career. We don't find ourselves really targeting one demographic over another in terms of experience or education. There's kind of I don't want to call it a voodoo to it, but there's a consideration that's pretty unique that, officers that come from other agencies have good habits and bad habits and experience. And so we're looking for the person that's the right fit for our department, and not necessarily we don't look at somebody just because they've been an officer for a long period of time and say, they're going to be a shoe-in above other applicants. We don't do that here at Avon. And so everybody, whether you're entry level or what we call a lateral officer coming from one agency to another, these are the 5 main criteria that they're going to have to complete. And so the number one thing is the age. So number one, they must be between 21 and 39 years old. And municipal law enforcement gets kind of a bad rap on this, because a lot of people get frustrated about the age range. They say, well, I'm 40 years old, I'm 42 years old, I've always wanted to do this career and now I can't. What's kind of frustrating is to tell people that the only limitation here is because of our PERF. So the Public Employee Retirement Fund in the state of Indiana, they actually set these guidelines on the age. So they have actuaries that go back and do a lot of research and talk about the appropriate time frame for employment and their health conditions and whatnot. So we have no control over the age range. Obviously, they have to be 21 years old, obviously for obvious reasons in terms of alcohol enforcement laws. Secondly, they have to have a valid driver's license. Every uniformed officer is going to be driving that police car, so that's kind of a basic requirement as well. We do require a diploma or a GED, very basic platform of education. We want individuals that are street savvy. We want people that know how to talk to people, how to communicate, be a strong advocate for those in need. And so that the high school diploma or GED is required as a component of this. We do not require secondary education right now either. Our fourth requirement, and this is the one that usually gets a lot of removals from our process, is that we do a very thorough background investigation. So if you come to us straight out of college, we're going to go back and we're going to interview your college professors. We're going to talk to your advisors. We're going to talk to anybody that you ever lived next door to. We're going to talk to your parents. We're going to talk to your significant other, maybe even your ex-spouse, anybody like that has been a part of your life. And it's not that we're going to just listen and only adhere to one component of that, but we're really trying to get a total picture of what your character looks like. What are you doing when nobody's looking? Because that's the situation you're going to be in as an Avon officer at 2 a.m, out on a vehicle stop, and how you treat people, outwardly towards others. That gets reflected upon in previous phases of your life. And so that's what we want to do. We want to make sure we have good vetted employees for that. And then the fifth and final component here on this graphic talks about completion of the Law Enforcement Academy. We do have a field training program as well as a probationary year of employment. And so even if you come from another police department as a lateral, you'll still have to serve 1 year of probation with our department. And you may come to our department and have already had the completion of the Indiana Law Enforcement Academy, but you certainly have not done the Avon Police Department field training or actually been on staff for 1 year until you become what we call a merit employee, which at that point you have abilities and protections through policies, and you're afforded a very appropriate level of due process in both how you perform and how you're disciplined in the work environment. So those are our 5 basic requirements, which would include anybody that's new, or even if someone was going to lateral over to us to come to Avon PD from somewhere else.
Yeah, I mean, just initially, reading those and listening to you speak, it might seem that's a little bit more intensive than like just the common employer. But public service, has a different standard that we have to uphold, to the community. So that kind of makes sense. I just have one other question. Is the Law Enforcement Academy, is that what's right over in Plainfield?
It is. So the Indiana Law Enforcement Academy is a requirement by state law that we send people to. They actually will attend that academy. It's a residency academy, which means that you'll sleep and live there Monday through Friday for 15 weeks. That program right now looks a little different because of COVID. We've seen a lot of transition and changes, but for the most part, they're still having cadets come to the actual facility. So we're fortunate being in Avon that you're not coming from one of the far corners of the state and you're driving 3 hours and you're that far away from your family. Things look a lot different right now across the state because of COVID, but that's right here in Plainfield. So it's a very close proximity to the applicants here.
Okay. So I know there was another graphic here that if someone was already an officer, that maybe they would want to transition over here to Avon Police. What's that look like, and what's the requirements for that?
So anytime that we actually administer a hiring process, we have to follow very specific bylaws. Now, for the Avon Police Department, we're what you call a merit commission department, right? So our police chief, our elected officials, and in the sense of our town council members, none of those individuals actually do the hiring, the discipline, or the termination of employees. And so this is a civilian oversight component to what we have here in Avon. And to be honest with you, I wouldn't change anything about it. These are 5 individuals that represent different demographics, different age groups. These are all 5 residents of the town of Avon that serve. And so these individuals have bylaws that are reflective of state statutes, and those dictate how we're able to quantify performance in our hiring process. And so there's a lot of strict rules in how we have to administer that. And those rules are in place for good reasons. These are rules that ensure that we are being objective in our hiring processes, that we don't run into a situation where, well, hey, the chief over here knows this guy and his son or daughter wants to get hired. And so it's a buddy of a friend of a pal.
Right.
We just don't do that. And to be quite honest, when I got hired in Avon, I knew nobody in Hendricks County at all. And so I can speak from experience that when I applied for Avon, I didn't deal with the situation where somebody knew who I was calling in a favor. I played a sport with a particular family or had a last name that people would know. And
Right.
so in terms of a lateral process, you're seeing this all across Indiana right now, and quite frankly, all the way around the country, is the ability to have people come in and switch from one agency to another and find themselves finding incentives to do so. I apologize, a little tickle coming up on me there.
No, that's okay.
So with the lateral graphic, a couple of things that are on that graphic we're talking about is that if you've already graduated from the Indiana Law Enforcement Academy with a different agency, the lateral applicant process that comes to our department is we're going to take a very close look at all of your previous training. We want to make sure we have a strong understanding. Have you been an officer for 1 year? Have you been an officer for 5 years? Have you been an officer for 15 years? And obviously that's going to open up more doors in our background investigation, right? How we're going to go speak to somebody. We're going to look at personnel files. We're really excited, to be honest with you, about a recent law that was passed. It was a part of the larger police reform bill that basically at this point requires police agencies to allow other police agencies to see applicant personnel files, which is huge. So
Yeah.
the lateral applicant process, sometimes in historics, right, it would look very suspicious. Why are you leaving an agency after being there for 15 years? And there was an ability to not necessarily want to share information from one agency to another. And that has always really bothered us. So we're really supportive of this change in the laws. And so we're going to take a closer look at that personnel file, and we're going to pay close attention to what your training looked like up to the point that you've applied for our department. For a lateral officer, though, one of the biggest incentives is that you're going to have an abbreviated field training program. So instead of going out and having to be in our vehicles for 17 weeks and training, if you've been doing this job for any period of time, have any level of proficiency whatsoever, you're going to not have to spend the full time frame in our field training. So that's a huge bonus for people to not have to feel like they have to go through the academy, so to speak, all over again. Secondly, and I think this is what we had some more control over for lateral applicants, was immediately following that field training, our town council was very supportive and saying, you've already done this job for a period of time. You've established a level of self-efficiency and being able to go out and do the job without somebody being over your shoulder for a year, and going ahead and moving these applicants to our first class salary. So there on the graphic, you see our current first class salary just south of $58,000 a year. For our 2022 budget, our fingers are crossed. We hope that our financial projections are looking good enough at this point. We're thinking that we're going to be able to get that base pay to $60,000, which is just monumental for our profession, especially for our community.
Most
And
definitely.
so, yeah, and I think we talked a little bit earlier about not everything is about your pay, right? I mean, there's a lot of agencies that pay really well, and a lot of them that pay much better than what Avon PD can afford to pay, but they're working in communities that they're not supported in. They're working in communities that they just don't really have much of a community support in the sense of outwardly or, even intrinsically, any communication and relationships with leaders in their community that are helping them highlight the good that law enforcement is doing. And so one of the last things we did have a little control over and try to make this more inviting for laterals was their paid time off. And so if you came to Avon PD and you worked somewhere for 10 years, whenever you walk in the door with Avon Police Department, you're going to actually get the same amount of PTO from the town of Avon as though you had worked for the town of Avon for those previous 10 years.
Wow.
And so,
That's great.
That's great.
Yeah, it's something that you just have to find ways to be competitive. And so we are an employee first driven organization from the very top to the very bottom and from the very left to the very right. Our focus is on our employees, making sure that we're taking care of them, not necessarily just in compensatory related issues, but their emotional health, right? Their well-being. And so when I first started, we were a 12-man department. We're now at 35. And so as we continue to grow, getting closer and closer to 40 and 50, it's harder to maintain that close relationship with your staff. Mm-hmm. It's harder to, keep those personal relationships as meaningful and as valuable as they are. But at the end of the day, for us, it's all about the qualified candidate. And so, we made a couple of graphics that have talked a little bit about, people with checkered past or questionable backgrounds need not apply. That kind of sounds in jest, but the reality is we mean every syllable of those phrases. That if you have debating conversation about whether or not you have what it takes to pass a thorough background, we'd rather target a more qualified candidate. And it's been interesting. I'll share this too, Karen, because it's kind of a funny story. I think we may have talked about this before. Was we have many of times stories where we have applicants that have applied for our department and we rejected them, and they've actually shown up on local television stations for criminal incidents and arrests and questionable things. And you just have to look back at that and think, man, kind of was able to dodge that bad PR right there and mm-hmm. realize that person wasn't a good fit for us. So we'll see where we're going, but our testing is on Saturday, so we'll see how many people we have actually show up and put their best foot forward.
Okay, so before we end, someone can see that graphic. Maybe they've stumbled across this video. They go to the Town of Avon's website, or can they go to your Facebook page? How does someone actually apply before Friday if they want to join the process?
So it only takes about 2 minutes, and I mean that if you're a slow typer. You go to avongov.org, and right there on our homepage, you'll find a graphic and a link that will take you straight to the online pre-application. It'll have all the details about our benefit package. It'll have all the details about the testing date and time for Saturday. It will talk to them briefly about what the interview phase will look like as well, when those interviews will take place. And so if you go through there, we're going to ask you things like your name, your date of birth, some contact information from you, as well as an emergency contact information for Saturday in case something crazy would happen. Who could we get a hold of in those moments? It takes literally less than 2 minutes to get your name in there. And then from there, you'll get a confirmation email sent to you that says, hey, we received your request. We'll see you on Saturday. And so literally avongov.org, 2 minutes later, you're registered, and then we'll see you on Saturday morning.
Great. Well, thank you for taking the time out of your day to join me today. And hopefully maybe someone will stumble across this video and maybe you'll get another qualified applicant to join in the process, and maybe one day we'll see him over there at Avon PD.
That's awesome. We appreciate your time, Karen. I really do appreciate the opportunity to share about our agency, and we'll keep you posted. We'll hopefully get some smiley, happy faces out there for us.
Awesome. Okay. Well, I look forward to our next community connection segment. I'm sure, throughout the year and years to come, there's going to be plenty of events that we will have to, update our community with. So thanks for your time again, and I look forward to next time.
All right. Thanks, Karen.
See ya.